Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to guide you through this one, because we are decoding some of the most potent, ancient wisdom ever recorded. Today, we're diving into the timeless mechanics of strategic leverage, discipline, and intelligence, all based on the teachings of Sun Tzu. We're going to strip away the myths and look at the hard, calculated reality of what it actually takes to secure a decisive advantage in any high-stakes arena. All right, let's dive right into this. 1,000. That's a pretty big number, right? Well, before we can even start talking about brilliant tactics or clever maneuvers, we really have to ground ourselves in a terrifying reality. According to the ancient texts, 1,000 is the daily cost, in ounces of silver, required to march a massive army of 100,000 men over great distances. Imagine bleeding 1,000 ounces of silver every single day. This immediately establishes the terrifying stakes of conflict. It is a massive, incredibly fast drain on your resources. So this brings us to our first major concept, the cost of conflict and the daily drain on resources. Before we even think about making a move, we have to truly understand the sheer economic devastation of a prolonged campaign. But wait, it gets worse, because the cost isn't just measured in silver. The real devastation is the human toll. We're talking about up to 700,000 families who will be impeded in their daily labor because of the commotion, the logistics, and just the sheer exhaustion of moving provisions across highways. Think about that socioeconomic paralysis for a second. This sets up the absolute necessity for a rapid, efficient victory. You literally cannot afford to drag things out. You need leverage. So how exactly do you gain that kind of extreme leverage? That brings us to concept 2, mastering the fire attack and leveraging the power of nature. To multiply your force, you have to tap into the immense, unforgiving power of nature itself. And it's actually incredibly systematic. The text outlines 5 highly specific ways to attack with fire. You don't just, light a match and hope for the best. You target their personnel by burning soldiers right in their camp. You starve them by burning their stores. You absolutely cripple their logistics by taking out the baggage trains. You disarm them by burning arsenals and magazines. Or you disrupt them by hurling dropping fire right into the middle of the enemy. Notice how this systematically dismantles their entire infrastructure and resource base. It's totally ruthless. Now, this is the part I find absolutely fascinating. Fire isn't just about destruction, it's about insane, meticulous preparation and environmental awareness. You obviously must have the materials ready, but more importantly, there's a proper season. We're talking very dry weather and very specific days. The ancient commanders literally calculated the stars, looking for the moon to be in the constellations of the sieve, the wall, the wing, or the crossbar. Why? Because those 4 specific constellations mark the days of rising wind. You aren't just fighting the enemy, you're literally harnessing the atmosphere. But hey, even with flawless timing, fire is unpredictable. So a commander has to be prepared to meet 5 possible developments once the fire actually starts. If a fire breaks out inside the camp, you attack from the outside. If the enemy stays quiet despite the flames, you bide your time and hold back. When the flames peak, you follow up if it makes sense, or you stay put if it doesn't. If you can assault with fire from the outside, don't wait for a breakout on the inside, just go for it. And the absolute golden rule, always start a fire to the windward side. Never, ever attack from the leeward. Controlling fire requires intense tactical flexibility and just an absolute lock on your situational awareness. But there's a massive warning attached to all of this. Mastering physical fire is completely useless if a leader cannot master the fire within themselves. And that takes us to concept 3, the discipline of command, choosing logic over emotion. It really all boils down to understanding the difference between 2 totally distinct mindsets. On one side, we have the enlightened ruler. This leader lays plans well ahead, cultivates their resources, and moves only when there is a clear advantage to be gained. If there's no advantage, they stay exactly where they are. On the flip side, we have the emotional commander. This is the ruler who throws troops into the field just to gratify his own spleen, or a general who fights simply because he's annoyed or out of pique. Strategic decisions absolutely must be driven by pure, cold advantage, never by passing anger or vexation. I mean, anger can eventually turn back to gladness, but a disastrous strategic decision, you can't undo that. I want you to just let this quote sink in for a second, directly from the source material. But a kingdom that has once been destroyed can never come again into being, nor can the dead ever be brought back to life. Heavy, right? This is exactly why the enlightened ruler is heedful and the good general is full of caution. If you let emotion dictate your strategy, the consequences are permanent. Which naturally leads us to the million-dollar question. How do you actually gain this crucial advantage? If you can't rely on your emotions and you're only supposed to move when success is practically guaranteed, what is the secret weapon you need to unlock that guarantee? The answer is foreknowledge. Concept 4, the power of foreknowledge, and escaping the height of inhumanity. Remember those 1,000 ounces of silver a day and those 700,000 suffering families we talked about earlier? Well, the text argues that remaining in ignorance of the enemy simply because a leader doesn't want to spend a measly 100 ounces of silver on rewards for spies, that is the literal height of inhumanity, because it needlessly prolongs the horrific suffering of war. But listen, this foreknowledge isn't some mystical, crystal ball kind of gift. You cannot elicit this knowledge from spirits or ghosts. You can't just guess it inductively from past experience, and you definitely can't map it out deductively with mathematical calculations. Knowledge of the enemy's dispositions can only be obtained from one specific place: other men. True strategic advantage absolutely requires human intelligence. And that brings us to what is basically an ancient espionage thriller detailed in the text. Concept 5, the 5 classes of spies, and the divine manipulation of the threads. So to get that absolute foreknowledge, you need this deeply interconnected network operating in 5 unique classes all at the same time. You've got local spies, which just means employing the local inhabitants of a district. You've got inward spies, which are the officials you've managed to turn inside the enemy's own ranks. Then you have converted spies, doomed spies, and surviving spies. When all 5 of these are humming along together, nobody can discover the secret system. The ancients literally called this the divine manipulation of the threads and considered it a sovereign's most precious faculty. But the absolute linchpin of this entire network, the converted spy. Basically, these are the enemy's own spies who came over to spy on you, but instead of just capturing or punishing them, you seek them out, tempt them with bribes, lead them away, and comfortably house them so they serve your purposes instead. The text is super explicit about this. All knowledge of the enemy is derived in the first instance from the converted spy. You have to treat them incredibly well because they literally hold the keys to the kingdom. And this builds into a brilliantly ingenious intelligence web. Check this out. Step 1, your newly converted spy brings you the baseline information. Step 2, because of that specific intel, you now know exactly who to target and bribe to acquire your local and inward spies. Step 3, armed with this really deep knowledge, you can send out a doomed spy to carry highly believable yet entirely false tidings right to the enemy to deceive them. Step 4, finally, it's because of the converted spy's initial information that your surviving spy knows exactly when and where to go to bring back crucial news. Every single branch of this operation is completely empowered by that one converted spy. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, this sounds like purely theoretical spycraft, history proves otherwise. The rise of the ancient Yin dynasty, that was entirely due to a spy named Ai Qi, who had served under the previous Hasha dynasty. Likewise, the massive Chao dynasty was built on the intelligence gathered by Liu Ya, who had served under the Yin. These intelligence operations didn't just win a couple of battles, they literally toppled and built entire empires. It's only the enlightened ruler and the wise general who use this highest level of intelligence to achieve these massive results. To really tie all of this together, we just need to look at this final, definitive statement. Spies are a most important element in war because on them depends an army's ability to move. Without this precise, human-driven intelligence, without the subtle ingenuity required to sift the truth from the lies, even the greatest military force in the world is completely blind and paralyzed. You can't move safely. You can't use your fire effectively. You simply have no advantage. So as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative thought. In your own strategic battles, whether that's in business, your career planning, or really any competitive arena, are you leading with emotional fire? Are you blindly draining your resources just out of pique and vexation? Or are you acting like the enlightened ruler, practicing profound discipline and mastering those invisible threads of foreknowledge to guarantee your advantage before you ever make a single move? It's a pretty huge paradigm shift, right? Thank you so much for hanging out and learning with me today, and I really hope this deep dive leaves you eager to reflect on how you gather your own intelligence. Catch you next time.